Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I do see a very large audience. I hope I can keep your interest alive. Uh, what we're going to be talking about today is about the broadband power line being part of the task force of Prime Alliance. Uh, the key part is I'll try to address the why as well, why we have a task force on broadband power line, why is it relevant today, and what are the changes that broadband power line per se is looking to bring in the smart metering and utility space per se, and how it supports the whole gamut of digitization in the utility space. One of the key reasons why we are talking about broadband power line task force within Prime Alliance. As you understand, Prime Alliance is a consortium of many large utilities globally, and you're talking about huge number of metering points supported by Prime Alliance being the organization to standardize and certify these technologies and solutions. One of the reasons why broadband power line was looked at from a task force perspective was simply, if you look 15 years back, everybody did thought that there's going to be a major change that's going to happen from in the smart metering space with broadband power line. What happened was, from a technology perspective, there was enough impetus for broadband power line to make an impact. But what was essentially lacking was largely from a business case perspective. 15 years back, the business case that's needed from a broadband power line did not exist. But in the last 3 years, you're seeing some major shift, major changes, and the need for broadband power line per se as a technology for smart metering is getting more relevant as we speak. The reason being, largely, I guess all of us do realize that the dependence of renewable energy is increasing, ever increasing. The need for cybersecurity, the need for faster data profile collection, the need for having speeds and bandwidth which are faster and a bigger pipe to address these requirements at a faster rate. All of these combined have given birth to broadband power line being more and more relevant. This particular need allowed Prime Alliance as an organization to take this up as a key task force. One of the reasons I'm standing here today, because this is one of the key task force within Prime Alliance. And what Prime Alliance is looking to do is to ensure that the broadband power line per se gets standardized, obviously with the help of some core partners within the group. And you can see partners like Eon, Chess, you have silicon companies like Renesas, IBM, coming together and working on ensuring that you have a standardized broadband power line. When we are talking about standardization, I think Prime Alliance has set up a very clear goal as well. And the goal primarily is to ensure that you have the broadband power line technology for smart metering, which is interoperable. I think in the world we live in today, interoperability has become very key. And being a new technology in the forefront, I think interoperability not just drives and ensuring that more and more metering vendors are able to adopt broadband power line in the best way possible, but also to ensure that there is a fair pricing model. Because if you look at the need for broadband power line in utility, it is pretty much there, but what is lacking is a fair pricing model. So this is one of the key initiatives from Prime Alliance to ensure that both interoperability and the right pricing for utilities are addressed. Other key factors driving the change, obviously we talked about because of the faster bandwidth, renewable integration and cybersecurity has become key. The other aspect also is the analytics. The bigger pipe provides you much more analytics than what you're typically used to from the smart metering space, and that is something that broadband power line ensures as well. There's been a couple of key steps taken. The whole initiative of the task force started in June 2018. There's been significant progress made from last year in June 2018 to where we stand today. There's been enough press added. There have been tests conducted, which we're going to be talking about in the presentation as we go along. Other aspects which have really triggered the need for broadband power line. Some examples is something that you see on the slides here. Whether you're talking about electric vehicles penetration, whether you're talking about the performance parity today, which is becoming much more visible when it comes to decentralization of energy. Previously, from a smart metering perspective, you had a simpler flow. You had the transmission companies, then the distribution, then the consumers. Today, consumers are no longer consumers, but you're talking about prosumers as well. You have more and more consumers trying to push the energy back to the grid. So the need for storage systems, the need for renewables is pretty much existent as we speak today. These tipping points together have again pushed a stronger need, and the traditional pipe that we had from a smart metering no longer is able to support this level of data that is coming in and out of the system. And also the conversations that we have with utilities today are changing. It is no longer about just power generation and distribution. We are talking about democratization of the grid. When we say a democratized grid, probably the utilities are looking at, to put it in a simpler word, the Uberization model of energy markets. So all these challenges per se has led to the need for faster bandwidth and a bigger pipe. Some numbers on decarbonization here. Just wanted to give an example of a country which is pretty strong from a renewable perspective, and Germany per se is leading the way when it comes to renewables integration, and the kind of data requirements that they have from metering is pretty clear. They are looking at technologies with a faster bandwidth, and BPL is one technology which Germany is leading the way of from adoption perspective, and E.ON, one of the larger utilities there, is moving towards the similar lines. So this is something that we see as a trend evolving from Germany in more and more countries in Europe and across the world. And this is again given the need for a standardized broadband power line solution. So when it comes to the choice of technology, there were quite a few steps taken from a Prime Alliance perspective with the technical task force as well. And while in the interim, when the task force is still working on the standardization, the Prime Alliance, along with its partners, recommends using the UPA, which is being currently used by Iberdrola, E.ON, and CHES, to be the technology choice in the interim till the whole standardized Prime BPL is available, which is targeted to be in the mid of 2020 next year. These are some important timelines. I would rather not go through each of the timeline, but what's very, very important is what has happened recently in November. I would say as early as last week. I guess after several tests that has been conducted, Prime Alliance Broadband Power Line Task Force have decided to use G.HN as the base for the Prime BPL, which should be released next year in June. In the interim will be the UPA, which I talked about. But this is a key decision because based on this technology choice and platform, there will be further specification coming in from the utilities and the task force to ensure that you have a standardized version of BPL available for all utilities to consume by mid next year. And that's the target that Prime Alliance is looking at from the task force. Key next steps, again, further validation of G.HN and ensuring the specification. Interoperability, I guess today we have a couple of multiple vendors, ISSI and MaxLinear, who have agreed to test these technologies. There's been a lot of work that's being done from the application layer perspective, and all of these key aspects which include the testing as well as ensuring interoperability. So some stiff targets in place for the standardized solution to be available mid next year. these are some use cases that were tested for broadband power line, both on medium voltage lines. Here you're talking about a solution specific to Germany per se, where you have the smart meter gateway and the BPL communication infrastructure supporting it, which is on a commercial rollout phase at this moment. You're talking about coexistence as well, along with narrowband, PLC coexistence. This is again one of the key features that broadband power line supports, where you don't need to look at it at a silo, but it can work with existing narrowband technologies as well. And there's a typical AMI infrastructure-based model where you have end-to-end BPL and 3G, 4G being used from a backhaul perspective. These are some interesting numbers which have been tested at Prime for broadband power line. You're talking about speeds of more than 100 Mbps. You're talking about for tests at 70 dB attenuation with again speeds of 50 Mbps. You're talking about speeds which are not common from the technology that's available today. So this is the need that broadband would create in utilities where utilities are looking at more data and faster data, and also ensuring that the profile collection is within the time period specified with the regulations which are changing more and more. And cybersecurity, as we know, is becoming more critical from the metering perspective in a utility. Most of these tests have been conducted. There are a few tests which are planned end of this year, beginning of next year, so that a standardized version of Prime BPL would be made available by June next year. This is again a very recent development where G.HN has been chosen as the Prime BPL technology of choice, from where there would be more specifications coming in from the Prime BPL, which will be added on top of G.HN, so that you have a full-fledged version of a Prime BPL certified BPL available by June next year. So this is more or less, I guess, this presentation kind of covers the need for broadband and why specifically Prime Alliance has looked at standardizing broadband power line today. And I'm more than happy to take any specific questions. I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, so who would like to start with the questions? Or it's a very interesting innovation, I think, the broadband use and so on, and the cases you are mentioning. Yeah. For me, one of the questions I think is, it's like a summary of what you have said, but what is the change or the strategic change of using this broadband instead of the other traditional systems in the Prime Alliance, let's say for Prime Alliance?
I guess the biggest need, as I was mentioning, is the democratization of the grid, or the Uberization of the grid. Because you're talking about evolving, changing business models today in the utility space. You're talking about at least a bi-directional flow. You are going to have more and more customers sending energy back to the grid. And the need for cybersecurity, I think, is extremely critical today. And we are not just talking about renewable energy integration, you're talking about millions of IoT devices. And as all of us know, it's only going to increase as we move along. And especially for utilities, when they are looking at a smart metering technology, they are looking at something which is future-proof and which is something available for the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. So the biggest question that was asked in Prime Alliance, which is the technology which is going to live for the next 10 years. And I guess broadband power line was one of the important technologies which Prime Alliance considered, which will probably help utilities plan their next smart metering for the next decade. I think the timing also is becoming critical, and having a technology which is future-proof, which will change, which will have the bandwidth to address the changing data needs that is growing. Today you're talking 100 Mbps speed. G.HN is supposed to come up with speeds in the next 1 year of up to 250 Mbps. So it is a technology which is scaled to grow. which becomes critical today.
So it's like an enabler for the future needs of the smart meter and smart grid.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've seen also Iberdrola is there, so they are
Yes.
leading. I know for many years they are working and sometimes leading even the prime systems. Which is their role here? Because I'm Spanish, I would like to know also a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Iberdrola are part of the group, the task force. Iberdrola is one of the key members of the group. Iberdrola started with the medium voltage using broadband power line. One of the use cases that you saw is what was implemented, the commercial rollout at Iberdrola. Now they are also looking at from a low voltage, more at the testing phase, but medium voltage is something that they've done on BPL. And E.ON has done it on low voltage. Now Iberdrola is considering it on low voltage. And Iberdrola they're a key board member of the task force, and they are driving the specs, they're driving the changes along with the other utilities, E.ON and CHESS, that you saw here. Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, now I would like to leave you a little break because I think it was an intensive morning by now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are a little bit delayed, 5 minutes, which is excellent for so many presentations. I would like you to be back in 10 minutes, so more or less 25 minutes to 12, correct? Yep. So thank you very much to the audience for being here so long. Thank you.